Now it's time for Uncancelled, where Britain's top commentators speak out on controversial issues without the fear of the cancel culture sweeping the rest of the media. And following the maddening news that pencil pushers in the Treasury had their wages boosted by up to 30% and received £15,000 bonuses during the pandemic when so many hard-working folk faced redundancy and NHS workers were battling for a pay rise, my guest tonight has called for a total overhaul of the civil service. Branding the current set-up a disgrace, former Brexit Party MEP Rupert Lowe argued civil servants waste billions of our money and are rewarded with fat salaries and enormous pensions. It's time for some accountability. This level of incompetence wouldn't be accepted in the private sector, so why are we all funding the public sector? And Rupert joins me now on Uncancelled. Rupert, it's an outrage, isn't it? They're totally unaccountable. These civil servants have absolutely no idea of what ordinary folk running businesses, losing work have had to grapple with over the past 18 months. And you know what, Rupert? I'm getting damn fed up of it.
Well, you and me both, Dan. Well, thanks for having me on. I've been banging on about this on my Twitter account for some time now. And having been an MEP, I met some of the civil servants who were supposed to be serving us all. And I was pretty underwhelmed by most of them. And I think what we're now seeing, we're seeing the, do as I say, not as I do culture, which comes with a centrally planned economy. We all know central planning doesn't work. So I think what's interesting is that the government and the state has now become far too big a part of our economy. And what we see now is the state being the main sort of bubbles of the entire economy, without which, as we've seen, the whole thing would collapse. The private sector should be the mainstay of the whole thing. It should be driving the economy, creating wealth. It should be directing investment. But now what we've got, and largely as a result of COVID, which has, I think, consolidated the position of the state, we've got this ridiculous situation where it's the state that's planning everything. And as we've seen, they've misdirected investment in PPE equipment. Look at Afghanistan, how much money has been spent on the actual cost of fighting that 20-year war. And now, tragically, I think the Afghan people are probably further behind than they would have been if we hadn't intervened at all. And it's tragic to watch what's happening over there. So I think the lessons of history are central planning doesn't work. It's very dangerous when you get the state involved. And really, this example that you've just given of Treasury officials receiving up to 30% salary increases, bonuses on top, is a classic example of do as I say, not as I do.
Well, it is. And also,
politics.
Rupert, these lazy so-and-sos have given themselves these massive pay rises while they're sitting on their bums at home every day, probably watching Loose Women and not working that hard. And they're refusing, the vast bulk of them are refusing to go back to the office. And that makes me furious too.
Well, Dan, it's easier to do nothing from home than when you're in the office, isn't it? Because most of them don't have much to do. So I guess, you get up in the morning, you walk the dog, and you really don't have to worry too much about, making it look as if you're actually doing something when you're not. So I think from their point of view, I totally agree with you. It's absolutely, totally frustrating.